All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the after show of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by woman Grandmaster Raluca Zgarcha. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing this again. I've tried to pronounce it about 10 times, but I'm still not doing that great. How are you today?
Hi, Pascal. Hi, I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Sure.
Everything
So,
fine
for,
here?
for, for those who don't know you, you are originally from Romania, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And you are going to be one of the coaches on our new coaches platform. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. I have been working with the guys there, helping a little bit, giving some tips from coaches' point of view on how I think the platform should look like, what features it should have, like to make our work as coaches a bit easier, right?
Also, yeah. So I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about that. Can you explain what about the platform is going to be different from other things that have been available for coaches so far?
Of course. Well, first of all, I think the most important thing that I haven't seen on any other platforms is that it has a video integrated. So if you're probably like me, like any other coach, you are probably using Skype and another platform to show all the material. But this time you only have to use the platform and everything is right there. Um, so another thing is that you also have an integrated database, so basically, you can browse through games while you prepare the material. You can add games from the database. And of course, you can still add your own material and prepare your lessons like in the normal ways. And aside from this, I think everything is very intuitive. Like, even if you haven't seen it before, it's very easy to understand how the platform works. Um, well, you have many colors like in chess base to work with, for example, threads and show arrows and um, whatever you want to point at. Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess
that's
it integrates. You can also make like lesson plans or save lessons and
yes, of course. This is a very important feature. Yeah, has all the lessons saved. You can come back to them at any moment, and yeah, just
and
browse through everything you have seen.
and I guess it's still sort of in testing mode, but it's close to being released. And but the idea also is that it will make it possible for coaches to find students and for students to find coaches easily, right?
Yeah, that's correct. You can. One of the things I like is that you can also choose a time frame for where you're not available. So many times your students ask you when you're available. Well, this time the student has the opportunity to actually see this and see if your schedules actually work and if he
Yeah,
can.
and I just showed here the card, which is sort of like a looks a little bit like a sports card that you collect when you're a child with the professional athletes. But this is,
It's
I
very
guess,
nice,
your coach card. Yeah, it is very nice.
very
And
professional. Yeah.
yeah. So those are going to be available for the coaches who are on the platform. And so I guess you can find students, coaches can find students, students can find coaches, and there'll be the ability to do group lessons as well, I guess, to make the cost a little more affordable. So all right, well, that's very exciting. I guess we should go back to the real chess content now. And so we were
It's good.
talking.
We still have some games in play, and that's very exciting these days.
Yeah, that's right. So we are very lucky. We are very lucky that there's still a lot of chess to look at with this
And good
tournament.
chess.
Yes. So today was an exciting day. Both matches. This is the first time that both matches went to Armageddon. It was also a day where both matches there was a player leading into the last game, and then they lost. And then I guess they also both lost the Armageddon. So if you're a betting person, and some of you may be playing in our fantasy chess contest, but if you were to say some two people are leading 2-1 and they're both going to lose the match, it's not a very big chance of that. So that was very exciting today, I think.
And I have to say that the games themselves were very exciting, and there was a lot of good chess
Yeah,
going
there were
on.
some crazy sacrifices,
Yeah,
and some very interesting.
games turning all the time. It's just
Yeah, interesting
Amazing.
openings, interesting positions. So we're gonna do this a little bit differently today. We sort of both picked out some key moments in the games, and I think I'll start. I'll start with the game between the first game. So we'll go kind of in order, but I'll start with the game between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Maxim of the first round. I mean, of the first round, the first game of the match, I should say. Um, and I'll just run through the opening very quickly. Oh, actually, which reminds me that I should show everybody the board, not only myself. So here we go. Whoops. And now for some reason, I lost you. I must have done something wrong here.
Okay. I
It's
hope you
my,
can still hear me.
yeah. I think everybody can still hear you. They just can't see you, which is a problem. So I'm going to fix that. You know, I'm still a beginner at all of this high tech stuff. Okay, so
Oh,
now
don't tell me about that.
now I see you. I just got to make sure that everybody else can, but I've got most of it figured out here. All right, I apologize for my little glitch here.
Anyway, you'll have to teach me how to do that, because I'm not even at that level.
Well, yes. So here we go. I think I've got you back. I think.
Okay.
Yes, you're back. Beautiful. Great. So, all right. So I will now start with the opening. It's an interesting one. So after Bishop G4, this has been played, I guess, quite a few times. I mean, I wouldn't call this like mainline theory, but it has been played. One of the things that was interesting, so White sacrifices the E2 pawn to get their knights on G5 and E5. It does look very threatening. One of the things that I noticed that was interesting is that in the database, one of the games was played by as black by Vladimir Potkin, a very strong Russian grandmaster. He is known to be the not the coach, but I guess like Nepomniachtchi's close friend and second, or they work together a lot, and he's a strong grandmaster in his own right. So he's had this position before as black, which I thought was pretty interesting, because yeah, I mean Nepomniachtchi was clearly prepared, you know, in this game. So so he plays rook to E1. H6, which is one of the moves. I mean, I think it's of course the most natural move to try to kick that knight away. And now,
sorry for interrupting you. I think it's important also to mention that Black cannot play probably a move like E6, which also looks natural, developing move.
Yeah.
Because now White's idea would be to play Bishop F3, right?
Yeah, Bishop F3 is the threat. So if Black just passes or makes a developing move, then Bishop F3 is basically winning, I guess. Because even on Bishop G6, I think it's just really bad. I guess here, I don't
There's
remember.
Some Bishop C6 ideas.
Bishop C6, okay. So Bishop C6. Yeah, I know that it's supposed to be bad. Yeah,
there are some crazy lines here.
Yeah, I guess here you can do something like this with Queen E6 mate. So okay, this is a little bit, but for them, you know, they've probably seen this before.
Definitely, yeah.
So he plays H6, which is kind of known, and then Nepomniachtchi plays knight takes F7, and this I thought was kind of amazing, because it's actually been played in 2 games, I think, but a lot of people I think played just knight E4, but it's a sacrifice of a whole piece, and there's no obvious follow-up. Like it's not like here he's got a crushing move or a crushing attack. It really is just kind of for long-term play. He weakens to E6 and G6 squares. You know, it's hard for Black to develop because of his pawn in E7. And then he just plays some kind of slow moves, right? Like he plays B4. And of course, Nepomniachtchi blitzes this out. Actually, one thing about Nepomniachtchi, he
always blitzes out.
He's blitzing, yeah, he was blitzing out every move in every game, pretty much. There was Grischuk they were having fun in the commentary, saying that Grischuk plays normally has less time than Nepomniachtchi after about 10 moves than Nepomniachtchi has.
Well, actually, Grischuk gave him this challenge if he could make it to 20 minutes.
Yes, yeah. He
Anyway,
said Grishuk said if he makes 30 moves, instantly, then he's going to have 20 minutes, which is definitely more time than Grishuk ever has after 20 moves. So in a slow game, So anyway, so B4, it's very interesting. Basically, he just wants to play B4, A4, A5, Bishop A3. He's basically playing normal moves. He's down a piece, but he's just saying that in the long term, it's hard for Black to play. So Black plays A6 to stop B5, A4, and we'll get to what I think is kind of the key moment, which is like the focus of this after show. We're doing it in terms of in terms of key moments. So I have to run through a few moves. These moves all made sense. Knight G6. This was actually quite interesting, also to take on F7 instead of Knight G6, which has sort of pluses and inconvenience, I guess. But Knight G6 was reasonable. It forces in both cases you're basically getting rid of the bishop. So Knight G6 takes King F8, B5. So he's threatening to take on E7, which forces Knight to D5, BC, BC. And now I think Nepomniachtchi just played too fast, and this is what I would consider the key moment of the game, where he just kind of lost the thread. I mean, he had two moves that were very natural and strong, and the first one is Rook to E6. And this is the one that he gave an interview afterwards and was sort of saying how he couldn't believe how badly he played at this point in the game. But Rook E6 followed by either Rook E1 or Rook takes C6. It's a really tough position. The most natural move is probably Queen D7 to just defend the pawn on C6 and attack the Rook. But here after Rook E1, it's actually already like probably close to losing, because the E7 pawn can't easily be defended. There's all sorts of tricks here too. Like, so I think like Rook E8, for example. I don't know if there's even a winning move here. It's just that now nothing is moving. Like I think
the key is that White's pieces are all active and joining the attack, right? Even if Black is an extra piece here, he has some pieces that do not help in the defense, but White is actually attacking with everything. So that should make sense here.
Yeah, I think there might be something. I think they were talking about this. Oh no, it's not in this position. There was a position where maybe it's here, bishop takes d5, but you can actually do nothing. Like you could do h4, you could do bishop c5, you could do d4. I mean, you could do almost anything. Black is out of move. So this was a really good position, and he just kind of spoiled it. And so I always find it unfortunate when you play such a brilliant game and then he ended up losing this game. So he played Rook B1, Queen D7, Rook B3. So that, first of all, has basically lost the tempo over playing Rook E6, Rook E1, because there's not really too much of an idea. And that gives MVL the time to play King G8 and Queen E8. And now he's basically out of the worst of the trouble. And he went on to win this game. We're not going to go through the whole thing. But here it's still playable for White, but it went from being like a position where Black has no moves to now Black is close to untangling. And MVL played some nice moves after he played Rook H7, Bishop F8, E6, and managed to get his pieces out. And eventually, of course, you're up a piece, you're probably going to win. So that was a pretty wild first game. What do you think? Do you want to go through the second game now, or go switch?
Yeah, I think you have covered. I think you've covered everything here.
All right. So the second game, that was another interesting one, which we could analyze for an hour, just this game for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
They repeated the French line, right? That they played in.
They played the candidates, yeah. The exact same line, I think, or like.
Yeah, I think up to.
Up to 92, where.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
One was played. Yeah, King F8. This was a novelty at the time. I remember King F8.
Yeah, and all of this was. Yeah, so I think this is no, not here. Yeah, here.
Not here is where MVL played Queen D1 in the candidates.
Yeah, he played Queen D1 in the candidates, and I actually think this is important because it shows you that he knows the idea of playing Queen D1, because that becomes relevant later on. But Queen D1, the idea that the queen has kind of done the job that it needs to do on a king side, which is to sort of force Black to castle with the king on F8 and Rook on G8 instead of the king on G8 and the rook on f8, which is not the way you want to castle. But in this game, he plays knight e2, so maybe an improvement, or maybe just a different attempt.
Maybe to take his opponent out of his preparation in
I mean, obviously,
Queen
this is some deeper preparation than most of us see in games. But now they play normal moves. But I think something basically goes wrong
I think here it's where it all starts for White. I really like this plan of rook d1, no? Because he needs to find a way to activate his pieces.
Yeah.
And this is probably the best way, because as we have seen in the candidates match, this bishop on c1 is actually important, and it needs to basically go to on a3 most of the times to put pressure on the king.
Yeah.
Continue to attack, no? So it makes no sense to move it out and then look for a way to bring the rook.
Yeah, basically this move has two ideas. He's trying to activate the bishop, and he's trying to get the rook on the b file. And so he's got, but I guess if he moves his bishop to, say, like bishop e3, for example, it does neither of both, because the rook can't come to b1. It's not a protected square, and the bishop can't come to a3 anymore. So the bishop is actually kind of silly on e3. So rook d1 is a really nice move. The idea is to play rook d2 and rook b2. Now, to be honest, I don't think he finds this idea over the board unless he's like seen it in his preparation, because it is a weird maneuver, very unusual, but really nice. So now, I guess this is probably, like you said, where Nepo starts to go wrong, because this, even though it looks very nice, in reality, he actually gets his queen sort of far away from the action.
It's kind of trapped in the end in the center.
Yeah. So now he continues with his plan, rook d2. Knight b6 makes sense, try to close the file. Rook b2, queen d3, bishop d2. So he's defending the c3 pawn in order to be able to play knight f4. And this already seems like a tough position. The knight can't move, right? Because there's rook b8 check all the time. And then these two pieces, right? The king and the rook, I should remove this arrow, are just, again, of course, you'd want to have the rook on f8 and the king on g8, and then black would be much better. Probably.
It's very difficult to get the rook out, and we have seen this in their previous game as well.
Yeah, this was the story of that other game too. But here, basically, it's already difficult. And he played king to e8, knight f4, queen e4. And this is, I guess, the moment where MVL probably after the game was not so happy with what he did, because he played f3, which it's logical because it forces the queen to go to a far away square. But his position was basically winning if he just played the right move order. So he played f3, queen h7, and then a4. If he had played first a4, I think the game would basically have ended very, very quickly. And it's, of course, he saw the idea to play a4 because he plays it on the next move. But there's a few differences here. First of all, so he's threatening, or he wants to play a5, which dislodges the knight and opens the file. And on knight c6, now there's f3, queen h7, and there's knight takes e6. So this was one of the key points, which is that if the knight comes to c6 to defend the b8 square, then it basically loses by force instantly. I mean, I guess you can play queen f5, but this is not going to be a nice. Not going to be a very nice end game here after rook b5.
That pawn on d5 is just...
Yeah. There's also a5. Everything is just falling apart. This is probably totally lost. So, and finally, I guess there's some other ideas. So
actually, I think the problem with f3 is that what you are showing works. I mean, the f3 idea is fine, just only if the knight is on c6, right? Because then the queen on g4 does the trick.
Yeah.
And but there are many lines where, when you need to...
Yeah, one of the key, and if he plays like in the game, so in the game, he goes f3, queen h7, a4, king d7. So if he tries to play king d7 after a4 first, then after a5,
knight a8, like in the game?
Yeah, and now the difference is that there's queen d1, and so the pawn is not in the way, so the queen is actually able to come back. And now after queen a4, it's just going to be game over, because there's all these pieces attacking, and black is not able to get their pieces back in the game. So So yeah, I mean, I think it's actually quite trivial after a4. He would win this, very very quickly. So he could have started the match with, and in the game, so it went f3, a4, king d7. He's probably still doing okay, but now it's just kind of, black is solid, and eventually, I guess Nepo was actually winning. Uh,
Yeah, it developed into a very nice end game in the end with the. I think this is all fine for white still, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the game kind of went back and forth a few times,
Mhm.
and they got this weird, position where black is up a piece, but his knights are tied to each other, and sort of one of is going to fall at some point. But yeah, and then somehow it ended in a draw.
That is not that easy either.
No, no, no. Yeah, it was not. This was like kind of tough for both sides. I guess white had more chances than black, but um, so this was kind of a crazy match because I'm going to go to the next game because I'm spending too much time. But they
It was
were
just
just
it was an amazing round, I have to say. It's just
yeah, it really was. There was a lot of good chess today. Um, Now the third game was interesting because this match was weird because MVL won the first game. Arguably, that was his worst game. Like he was, he could have been in real trouble, but he won the first game. Then the second game he could have won. The third game, it looks like he was close to winning, and he didn't put his opponent away. And sometimes that's what happens in a match when you don't put your opponent away. Then things go the other way. So this started as a closed Sicilian, and I'm not going to go through the whole opening. I'm just showing that it started as a closed Sicilian. But basically, Black got a very, very comfortable position and uh, eventually won a pawn and finds himself in this position. And it's not as easy. It's not an He's up a pawn in this position, but it's not as easy to play as it looks. But here he just made a kind of strange decision to give the c pawn for the d pawn. And I know our commentators, and of course it's always easy sitting at home with an engine, but our commentators like Peter Zvidler, Jan Gustafsson, they're not running the engine, and I know they were all very surprised by the move that he made here, which I think most people would not make, which is queen d5. So he's allowing the trade of the c pawn for the d pawn, right? So now, of course, Nepo took it. So here, and I'm not saying that this position is easy to win for black because I don't think that it is. But he had all kinds of moves like rook c8, to be able to push c2 at some point on rook c1. And he also had maybe rook to d8. Basically, there's a few moves that attempt to keep a pawn up position in a kind of clean way. But after he gives this pawn for the c pawn, he's still up a pawn, but his king is just really really weak, and I think this position is just like probably equal. And somehow, I mean, this game was actually completely crazy. It goes in both directions in this end game where eventually I think it goes from winning for one side, winning for the other side. Of course, they're pretty fast time control. It gets kind of funny here after f4. So obviously the black king has been getting into some trouble. G4.
there are
Now in
some
this
crazy
position,
mating ideas here, yeah.
yeah. So this was actually very very instructive or kind of pretty, I guess. Is white had a win, and it's worth showing with h4. So h4, um, I guess. So first of all, the idea is on king takes g4. There's rook takes d6 with this pin, and so then that leaves king takes h4, and now yeah, it's bishop f6 check. So it's very nice. I mean, it's here and queen takes, and it's not just an exchange, right? Like the king is kind of getting mated, the bishop is falling. So it's just losing, and I don't know how much time. I forget how much time he had in this position because he plays so fast. But maybe at this point he was already sort of low. But he played queen h8, and after queen h8, then it's just actually a draw. And I don't know if he missed. He must have. I think he actually maybe thought he was winning. Thought that he could play rook d6, and on rook takes d6, he's got queen e5 or and he's winning. But maybe he just missed that there's check. I'm not totally sure because now it's just a perpetual and there's nothing there. So kind of a crazy crazy game. Um, so then before we go to the last game, I was thinking of switching to the Dingley Ren Fabiano match to get to like 2-1, and then the drama for save the drama
For that,
for
yeah,
the end.
the best for for the end.
Yeah. Um, so this game, yeah. So this started with a. Oh, is this the first game? No, this is not. Yeah, this is the first game, I
Yeah, I
think.
think this is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
first game.
yeah. So this one was an interesting, slightly unusual opening. You know, like a Chigorin where the knight is on c6, but white, you know, has not been able to play the quick c4 lines, which are more aggressive. Um, so knight b4, this has been played quite a few times actually, and so he starts with knight a3, black goes back, and so they have a funny like little draw for a moment here, which I think okay white would never really take, and then he plays c4. So this gets to a really kind of wild position, but you know shows that Dingley Ren was not afraid to go for complications. Pretty interesting exchange sacrifice. I had not seen this line. I've seen this kind of idea, but I hadn't seen this line before, uh, and so I was interested to see how it goes on. But it looked like a fairly pleasant position after he got this knight back, and there were a lot of different alternatives for both sides. And I don't really have a key moment for this game because it was sort of a well played, solid game. I mean, of course, it looks like both sides could have improved, but for the time control, it seemed like a really well played game. Um,
Yeah, it seems like white has plenty of compensation, right? With the
yeah, for sure,
bishop,
plenty of compensation
um,
in one
a
pawn, and
lot
I
of
guess
activity.
yeah, this pawn on d5 is weak. The rooks are not really well, you know, working together.
Also, the
So
pawn on c7 has to be taken care of all the time.
yeah, yeah, not so he had this idea h4, I guess, to play king h2 or something like that. Um, but Fabiano somehow managed to defend this. Fabiano, by the way, is like really tough to beat, right? He's just like um, he's very good at calculation, and he defends like tough positions really well. So here he managed to hold, and they made a perpetual. There was no basically both kings are in enough trouble that neither side has time to do anything. Um, so that was the first game. Then in the second one, and remind me if I'm forgetting some key moment. Definitely let me know. Now this
Yeah, I
was
think.
Dingley Ren playing the Najdorf, which is sort of new for him in this tournament, right? I mean, he's played the Najdorf before, but he had been playing e4, e5 so much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he has been trying this.
Now, for some reason, lately in Wei Kanze and a bunch of tournaments, White keeps trying very strange setups against the Najdorf, like Rook G1 or A4 first or Knight B3 or like just all sorts of Queen E2. I mean, all sorts of weird moves. And so Fabiano comes up with yet another weird idea: Queen D3 first. Um, I can't say I don't think anybody was too impressed, including himself, in with this setup today. Um, but Dingley Ren, you know, with his Najdorf, has been getting very good positions. So he basically his idea was to put the queen on g3 as quickly as possible. Um, so black chooses to develop the queen side first, but it doesn't look like white has a very like good version of anything because the combination of a4 with the queen being on this side means that
That's a bit
he doesn't
awkward.
really want a castle because there's always going to be like rook takes c3 and then d5 and it just doesn't look like a really optimal setup. So he plays bishop e2. Now Dingley Ren plays bishop e7 with the idea that he can play rook g8, rook takes g2 if they take. Uh, Basically, you know, I think it looks like a good Sicilian for black, but the game gets interesting. Um, of course, you know, many options for both sides. Um, but here, I think, you know, it was one of these positions where Ding Liren didn't really have to go for this sort of pawn sacrifice, but he clearly decided that it was pretty good for him. And here, yeah, so he
Actually,
makes
the
the
commentators were wondering if he perhaps missed the bishop a7 in between move and
uh,
thought that he could get the pawn back here with
like
bishop
bishop
e4.
b4. Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe he did miss that because I was a little surprised because his position was such a natural looking Sicilian that it doesn't look like he's got any real reason to go for this. Like he could play knight c5 here and he
Yeah, and
doesn't have
just
to.
play normal, right?
Yeah, completely normal. It looks like white has really no advantage at all. Um, and he didn't have to go for this knight h5, or even h6 was a bit unusual, right? Um, so he might have missed something, but it looks like the position was still very playable. He just did
He did
one.
get a lot of counterplay here. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of counterplay here. I think he just went for maybe the wrong setup, and it's hard with this time control to choose. There were so many options here. There's still, bishop a4, bishop e4. There's bishop a7, like you mentioned. Uh,
yeah.
but it looks like maybe, I think the one that I like the most was just taking, then rook c6, the queen goes back somewhere, and then queen c7, and then you play either rook c8, bishop f6, uh, sometimes bishop g5, and then bishop f6 just to weaken the e pawn. And that still looks like a pretty solid, good position for black. Instead, um, he played bishop c6 first, and then it just got really messy. But maybe white was better. But I think there was a moment that you had noticed. So I'll let you
Well, the end
explain.
game, the end game was absolutely amazing in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, yeah. No, I think I missed it because I was running out of time to look at everything. But you pointed out, and
So
I'll let you explain it when it gets to
right
this
about
position.
here, I think bishop c7 is what
Yeah,
white played, and it seems like this is going to be a draw, right? Because okay, black should be able to hold here. It's true that the white king is more active, and it seems like it will get to a6. But for example, a move like bishop f2, white will be very careful because after this, I mean, black will have to be very careful because after king b4, he's obviously threatening king a5. Black has to get the king to c6, so he will have to play king d7 now and defend with the king on b7 eventually. A move like bishop e1 instead would lose because it allows the king to advance to c5 and b6. So of course this will be a draw, but black will have to be careful, right? It looks like
yeah.
here he will have to work for it. But instead of this, I think he must have calculated everything. He saw this bishop f4, and which leads to a study like
Yeah, it's
finish.
actually I'm kind of amazed that if he calculated everything here, I'm really impressed because it looks not easy. But it's true that, like you said, it seems like it's almost forced, right? Like there's not uh so he can't there's no alternative for black, right? So if he plays king d6
Yeah,
a5, then
and that's
it's just a he's losing that race, right? He can't go here king c5 and white is too fast. So in the game, so he has to play a5. I'm
a5
sorry.
himself. Actually, if white went a5 himself instead of king d4, black also gets to defend after king e5, king c5. Then the draw is simply keeping
Yeah,
the king caged on c6. That's also
yeah.
very
Those. That's a known. This is a known schema where eventually, white actually has to repeat. They can do this one time f5. If he didn't have f5, if the pawn's already on f5, would be losing, I guess. Um, but now he just keeps the opposition, and uh,
and that's a draw. Yeah?
yeah, yeah. I mean, if only
Unless he
this
goes
is
there and
white.
and
White
that's
white can
losing
try. White can try to lose. And now
if he wants.
black
Yeah,
is
I
winning.
don't
Yeah.
think that's a good idea.
No. So after king d4, a5. Yeah, and this
a5.
is
Oh,
yeah. Now it gets to be an amazing race. So this is all forced, and I'm not going to make everybody try to calculate it. But they get to this position, and because the pawn is on h4, right? If it was h5, if the pawns were
then it
one
will be
square
losing.
further, then it would be losing for for black. So he's able to get these pawns, but now he doesn't have the g3 square, right? So
Yeah,
um,
exactly. Well, yeah,
so for example, like queen f3, king g1, if this h
was
pawn
on
was say
h6
here or
or
here,
h5.
then there would be queen g3 check, forcing the king to go to f1, and then you can bring your king. Because
Yeah,
if the king goes to h1, then you can just take the pawn if you still have a pawn that can move. So in this position, he doesn't have the square, so he has to take the pawn. And after he takes the pawn, then this is, of course, with the f pawn
a
is a
theoretical
is
draw.
a stalemate draw, which they actually showed for everyone to see. So, which is very nice of them. uh, so, so yeah, that was an amazing endgame to get in. It's such a quick time control. I would like to ask him if he saw everything or if he just
Yeah,
kind of
I'm also curious, so I'll be
yeah,
I'll
because
be watching.
it's not so it's definitely not easy. All right, so next game, game three, This is the one that Ding Liren won, and it started with this line, which is, some people would call that a boring variation, but it is a little tricky for. It is definitely a tricky line for Black to play.
It is, yeah.
But it actually led to, even though it's a boring quote unquote variation, it actually led to a really interesting. Someone is asking, where is Sam Shanklin? Yeah, so Sam Shanklin was here for a couple of days. The
Sorry.
after show, no. Well, I mean, it's the after show is going to have different guests. You're kind of stuck with me because I'm running the after show, so I'm always around, and then the other people are going to rotate. And so today I'm happy to have Silvia Raluca with us, and yeah. So, but I actually like it to have some variety is good. Especially since I'm there every day. So, but this was a pretty. I was actually surprised that he went for this Queen H4 plan, just because.
Kind of trapped the queen there.
Yeah, so he didn't have to. Like, I know there's a lot of moves that seem to be possible. Like, the most obvious one is maybe B5 with the idea to go, like, I don't
B4.
know. Yeah, B4, Queen B6. You don't have to put the queen over there. Clearly, he was worried about some kind of like Rook H3, F5. But even Rook H8, I know, of course, again, I check things with the computer to make sure I'm not saying nonsense. And, Rook H8 is a move the computer likes. I understand a human doesn't really like playing moves like Rook H8. But Queen H4...
No, and short time controls, I think initiative matters a lot.
But it's still kind of shocking to willingly go, and put your queen like this. It's because it's scary. So it shows that Fabiano, I think, trusts his instinct and complications, that it's going to be okay. And he was actually right. Like, I think this was fine. Of course, White here could, they can always basically play Rook G3, Rook H3, Rook G3, Rook H3 if he wanted to make a draw, which, I guess Fabiano was okay here with the match tied 1-1. So they repeat once, and then he plays Rook F1. So this sets up sort of a devilish kind of idea, right? In some cases, he wants to play F5, and it's a dangerous threat. So now he plays knight e7, which I think is a very logical move, although it's almost a blunder. I think basically it's a blunder that actually works out well if he plays perfectly, which he didn't. D4 was an interesting move, and it gets really messy. I'm sure he didn't love letting the knight on E4, and this is a tough position to assess, like in a rapid game. I mean, I think in slow games he would probably find this, and it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good for Black. I looked at ED, knight D4. The idea is that the rook is coming to C2, and he's also got his knight F5 point like he has in the game. And it looks like here White probably doesn't have anything better than a draw. But again, this is a messy, because it looks scary, right? Like he's running into this, and so is hard in a rapid game for sure. But
to assess everything,
yeah, it's a crazy position. So he goes knight E7. F5. So this was kind of the point of Rook F1. He wants to play Rook F4. One thing I was actually wondering is, was he threatening anything? Like, so if he played, like, let's say he just made a waiting move, like, I don't even know what a waiting move is, like King G8. Like, is F5? F5, there's Queen D4. So F5 was not a threat, but I guess, I mean, King G8 is, of course, a ridiculous move. I was just wondering if I don't know if there's a really one move threat yet. Of course, White can play like A3, B4. Like, they're going to improve their position. But okay, so he goes knight E7, F5. And now this was a really instructive moment. So he could have he played GF5, and after Rook F4, which GF5, of course, he saw that his queen was getting trapped, but he decided that was his best chance, sort of sacrificing here, an entire queen against a rook. Maybe he missed knight B1.
I think he actually missed that his rook, the rook on H4, or that his rook was hanging on D2. I think he mentioned something like that.
Like after Rook C2, like he maybe saw Rook C2 here, Rook H4, Rook D2, and Knight D2, and
I think so.
Yeah, which is
like
bad. But yeah, this position after F5 is actually fascinating. Like, so he could have played knight takes F5, and then on Rook F4, just completely ignored the threat to the queen and played D4. And now there's a couple of points, but this is a kind of an amazing position. So if he plays, so I guess first, we got to look at capturing the queen. Of course, you always have to start with the most the most forceful. So here it's actually just really bad for white. There's not really a good way to stop this pawn. So queen c2, rook d2. The pawn is
Because
just
now it's
going.
the queen against everybody else, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And these two rooks are actually, of course, if you're up a queen, it's fine to have two rooks like this. But if you're not up any material, then they can definitely be called offside. So, uh, oh, I have a guess.
So here,
It was my 1-year-old, I think, was walking in to the room. So yeah, so this is just lost. So he can't take. So then there's other, I guess, mainly knight moves. So the first one is knight e4, which is the most natural one. Just moving the knight to a good square, and it looks like the queen is trapped. But now there's this resource which we saw in the other position also. So basically, you got to do something about the queen defending the rook. So you try to deflect it like this, and this is actually just good for black, because rook takes, and the difference with the game variation is that the rook is attacked on h4. So knight d2, knight h4, and this completely lost, of course, with all these pawns, and black is already up material. So
yeah.
So there is a move for white, so it's not lost for white. White has a strong knight d5, and now
but they have to find his only moves.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? And then it goes into kind of a messy position: knight e2, king somewhere. I guess king f2, because king h1 runs into rook c1 probably.
Ideas of mate.
Yeah. And this, well, I don't know.
Has the queen, I think black has so much compensation.
Yeah.
Again,
I would take black. I mean, just
definitely,
I would take black for sure, because in this time control, you have a pass pawn. Your king is safe. This deep pawn. The pass pawn is probably the biggest thing. And material wise, it's like equal, right? You have a rook and a knight plus 2 pawns. So I mean, give or take, it's close enough material. So it's but okay, the computer says 0-0-0, which I have no idea what that means in this position.
There must be a forced draw.
It goes for some crazy, like, but this, there's almost no chance that people would play this way, I think. I mean, who knows? Maybe they would actually. There's some queen f6.
Maybe because sometimes when you're in these situations where you have to find only moves and especially only defenses, you tend to get them right.
Somehow. As I see the variation here, it's crazy. Like, white has to find a move, like, so e6 doesn't work here. So there's only one move, and it's bishop h3. And to find this move where it gives the discovered check is and this gives now equal, for 14 different variations, but it's that is crazy.
It's still not clear why it's going to be a draw.
No, it's not clear to me at all. Yeah. So knight f4, I have no idea. This is the kind of stuff, I guess you go here. And now if you take, then maybe e6. Yeah, now e6. And then it's a draw. Taking back on h3 loses. So this is, to find this idea is pretty tough. I mean, this rook on h4 is still so stupid. This is amazing. Just an amazing position. We really had some unbelievable chess today.
Yeah, where activity seems to matter all the time. Counterplay and
so
good pieces.
All right, I got to speed it up, because otherwise this show is going to last 3 hours. So he took on f5 with a pawn, and then after rook f4, basically we can stop there. I mean, he lost a queen for not enough compensation. So all right. So now both matches are at 2-1, right? We've gone through everything else. So now, as you know, because we talked about how these games go to Armageddon, MVL lost with white, and I'm not really going to go through this game because it wasn't that interesting. It was just sort of he got ground down. He played a little bit too passively in a, what normally it would be. This is just the beginning of it. This is sort of a known variation that's supposed to be, equal. Black has plenty of activity, but it's, of course, sort of looks more like a Rai Lopez and a Sicilian, and but it just wasn't. He just normally MVL plays really well in these kinds of pressure situations where he needs to make a draw with white, but this one just didn't work out for him. Um, so
Maybe he just collapsed after failing to win
yeah,
to
yeah, you're
his
right. That was
rating. Sometimes it happens, right? That even in a game when you are winning and you are winning, we are winning, and you don't get to win it, you eventually collapse.
yeah. You had two chances to make it. Either 2-0 or 3-2.5 to 1 to half, I guess. And yeah, in this
I think
game,
also something must have happened to him because the Armageddon was also
yeah, the
quite
Armageddon.
brief.
We can actually look at the Armageddon right now. That's really quick. So after
Yeah.
Nepomniachtchi ground him down with black in the last slower game, um, in this game, um, they play what they call the French. What do they call it? Like the French variation of the French defense. So it starts as
Yeah.
a Petrov, but they get the same position as they do in this. You can get this position in this way: knight f3, knight f6, and so a lot of French players, like from France, have played this variation, like Bacrot and many others, and MVL, of course. This is not a secret that he works a lot with Bacrot. Um, so they all play this stuff. So it's not very surprising that he goes for this variation, which transposes. But they had a game in the candidates. Grischuk had a game with black actually in the candidates in this position, uh, and so you would expect MVL to know this kind of in and out, because it's a popular variation with players that he knows well. But for some reason, so he plays f4, and already this is considered to be not very good. And Grishuk was talking about it like this is known by everyone on the planet. I certainly didn't really know myself, but I'm gonna try not to be offended. He is a very strong player, so it's okay. But anyway, so f4, c5, and in Armageddon, in case some of our viewers don't know, White has to win. A draw is the same thing as a loss, and White starts with an extra minute in our setup. But this position already is not so amazing for White. Nepomniachtchi, of course, is playing instantly everything as he always does. Uh, Knight d2. So knight d2 is, if you know what's going to happen next, then knight d2 is obviously not a great move. Probably it's time to do something like this, and then knight d2. And okay, I think this structure is never going to be too bad. I think black can play e5. Uh, black is not going to suffer. It's basically, at least I think, completely equal for black. It's basically what you want to avoid in this line with white. Like if you want to do this, get into a position like this, you want your pawn to be on f2 so that you can kind of play against that center. But here it just exchanges too many things. But he plays knight d2, clearly not realizing that the move e5 is very strong. And now this was uncharacteristic because there's no reason for white to lose. And in a blitz game, you never know. Like you can still play this d takes c5, bishop takes c5, and okay, again, it's not a great position, but yeah, I guess knight b3, bishop b3, queen e3, and you can still
Just play on.
you just play, yeah, you just try to play some chess, and maybe you can get lucky. I mean,
Maybe he blundered.
yeah, no, he definitely blundered. He definitely blundered. After pawn takes e5, knight e5, and now this is already a pretty bad version for black. The idea being that pawn takes e5, queen e5, you're attacking h2. And if you play bishop f4, this is a little bit tricky. So queen e2, bishop e2, and now you can't take on e2. But if you take on, because the bishop on d6 hangs, but bishop f4, and this is already losing for white, going to be down a pawn and in a worse position. So yeah, so after knight e5, it's just pretty bad. But he plays bishop b5, which is horrible, and then after knight g4, he basically just resigns, here, which is kind of I've never seen MVL lose so fast, any game with white or black. So obviously Armageddon's a weird thing. Maybe he was a little bit upset about what happened earlier in the match, and obviously he's extremely.
I think that played an important part.
Yeah. I know momentum in these matches really plays a role. So we have a couple minutes to go through the last moments. I mean, the game that Fabiano ground down Dingley Ren. I guess I'll actually just show the entire game without much commentary, because it's just kind of a typical Fabiano game where he just fights. It wasn't better for white. If anything, maybe black had a more comfortable position in this game for most of it. Like here, I think black is definitely to be preferred. You know, I think Fabiano would say so also. Um, but he just manages somehow to fight, and he gets an interesting. So it looks like black is actually getting the upper hand here, but somehow Fabiano, very resourceful, finds this idea knight f5, which is sort of a pseudo sacrifice. So if you play bishop f5, ef, queen f5. So here there's queen takes c6, but there's also some other ideas. Like he in the game he basically sacrifices a pawn, but I guess here queen c6 is okay, and the position is improved for white a little bit. So what happens here? He goes g4, which it looks very scary, but he just he's a very good calculator. Bishop f5, ef, queen f5. Rook e4, and it's not easy for white. It's not easy for black to play this position. I mean, it's the f4 knight. If the f4 knight moves, then the g pawn is hanging, and suddenly the black king looks a little bit in trouble. And then there's what he plays, which sort of keeps a pawn, but not for long. And the f pawn is falling, and it's just a sort of a long endgame. Still seems like black is completely okay. There was one moment that was kind of interesting here. So c3. So Dingley Ren didn't have much time here, but it's actually a pretty interesting position where he had a very nice resource here that would have probably ended the match for him if he played rook to d6. The idea is that a rook on h4 is actually really misplaced. So if white makes the most natural move, rook d1, then black has king g6, and the idea is to play bishop g5. And this is actually quite nice. I mean, it's not white has two pieces that are almost trapped, right? And so, I mean, this one, of course, has
the rook on h4 seems to be a theme.
Yeah, the rook on h4 in this match was very important. That is actually pretty funny. I hadn't thought of that. So. Yeah, I mean, really, here it's actually probably lost for white. They don't have to lose. Like after rook d6, they can make a move. Like the computer finds ways to hold this, but it's sort of surprising because I thought it was probably obvious to Dingley Ren that this rook is in trouble. He can't play bishop g5 because of rook h5, but it seems like rook d6 is such a natural move. So he probably regretted this after the match. He played rook g6.
I think definitely more natural than rook g6, right? Because you would like to attack the weaknesses. With c3, white has weakened a bit the pawn on d3.
Yeah, so. I guess rook g6, he's trying to get his king to g6 if you take on g6. But of course, white will never take.
White doesn't have,
So now he kind of, I guess he gets it there. So that was his idea. The problem is that at this point, it doesn't, he's not quite in time anymore. So after cd4, he still had the funny thing is he still had a chance here. The move rook f6, hard to
same idea.
With the idea of bishop g5, and I guess
so he
wouldn't lose.
Keep the pawn on f4.
Yeah, I guess he won't lose this position because white's probably fine, but d5, bishop g5, you got to push. I think. No, that's just losing. There was something here. I don't know what it was, but I think there was a draw.
Maybe rook takes h5.
Oh, there's rook h5 here? How does that work? d6?
I'm saying that some ideas.
Yeah, maybe there's got to be some ideas.
Then you play it. You just get so many pawns. I think this is.
Yeah, maybe you can simplify.
Maybe the idea.
Yeah, so he still had a chance.
It's difficult.
Yeah, this game was sort of typical Fabiano that somehow manages to grind it down. And then the last game, so Dingley Ren, really had chances in this match because in this game, they repeat the same so-called, slightly, well, actually, no, they got a different, it's a similar structure with the G6 like Grunfeld, but they didn't do the C takes D5 right away. So it's a little bit different. Same structure though. And here, A4, I think is just it's basically like, he's playing a blitz game and he just messed up like E5, A4 is just a bad move. And after CD, CD BA4 is just down a pawn, and it's not a pawn that you want to lose because even though it's a doubled pawn, white just has a really easy game here. So he wins a pawn, and okay, the next few moves are sort of normal until we get to this position where, well, actually, I'll say this position. There was one here, actually. Sorry, I'm going to in this position. I think he started to really kind of lose the thread here. And this is Armageddon. He's only got 5 minutes. But this is a position that you really want to win with white if you manage to get it. And I think there were a few simple moves that he could make that would keep things under control. And he played DE5, and I think that's just, it's fine. White is still better here, but probably a move like Bishop C3, not letting black activate. Or of course, Knight C5, the queen moves, and then maybe A4. And this looks like a much, he can even, you could even take later, or again, go back Bishop C3. And it looks like black is just going to suffer a lot in this, like, let's say he goes here. I think just Bishop C3. And this is just a horrible position for black to try to defend in a blitz game. I mean, you're down a pawn, and taking on D4 will only make things worse, I think. So his position was great. But he plays DE5, and now the rest, I mean, it's sort of, I mean, he was still better, but it's you could just feel somehow that things were not going right. H4 was a mistake because it allowed the move Rook A3. So Fabiano, to his credit, started playing really fast, after he got a bad position, and he managed to put pressure. And here, Ding Liren's position was already getting to be, so he's repeating actually. If it wasn't for the fact that black wins with a draw, he might have tried something else. But Bishop C4, Knight B3, Queen F5. Now black is already, even though they're down a pawn, they're so active. This A pawn is really annoying to. Sorry, I didn't mean to make some. I didn't mean to make this really long arrow.
Imagine it's the other way around.
So, the position just gets to be difficult for white to hold. And here he just blundered, but to Fabiano's credit, I think he wouldn't lose this position even if white made best moves. Like it looks like he's getting the A pawn back, and so I don't think he would lose this position even with that kind of time. So, but probably.
No, definitely he's the one pressing.
Yeah, I think
here,
so,
right?
because this king is so weak. I would think if anyone is pressing, it's black. But here, unfortunately, Ding Liren made a blunder. He played Queen B2, and Fabiano was very quick to spot Rook takes A2, a nice way to finish the match for him. Rook A2, Queen A2, Queen D1, and the knight falls. So, and keep in mind, he only even needs to draw. So, of course, it's over. But yeah, so we had some really amazing. I think this was the best day of chess so far. What do you think?
I think so. Yeah, I agree. I was actually thinking when I was watching the round, I thought that it would be difficult to select a few moments like you suggested, because it was amazing. There were so many moments.
I missed a question in the chat. Well, there's a question about norms. So do you have IM or GM norms? Someone is asking that in the chat.
I'm actually a Women International Master, but thank you for the kind presentation in the beginning. I do have a Women Grandmaster norm, and I have already had over 2,300, so I just need to get some tournaments going, so and play well and get the other
right now, but I guess the tournaments will come back eventually. So
eventually. Well, it's more time to prepare for that. Let's take the good part.
Exactly. Well, I'd like to, thank you for joining us today. That was a lot of fun, and we got to learn a little bit more about the CoChess platform, and it was good to look at the games with you. By the way, many of the moments that I showed came from Raluca, who picked them. So I was very happy that she did some of the work for me today. So thank you, and hopefully we'll see you again soon here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a lot of fun analyzing all this.
It was a pleasure. Well, thanks, guys, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Goodbye.
It's time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen introduces Chessable, the definitive solution for studying chess. Move Trainer uses the science of spaced repetition to identify your strengths and eliminate your weaknesses. There's no need to set up a board, remember which page you're on, or keep track of all the moves you miss. Move Trainer empowers you to go from the opening to the end game with confidence. It's a seamless, effective, and fun way to study chess. Choose from one of the largest online chess libraries in the world, with hundreds of titles ranging from classic books through to our exclusive Chessable courses, including over 100 free courses. Get expert insights from International Master John Bartholomew, Grandmaster Sam Shankland, International Master Christoph Sulecki, Grandmaster Simon Williams, World Champion Magnus Carlsen, and hundreds of other instructors. Get started now and join our growing community of over 100,000 chess enthusiasts at chessable.com. Chessable, take control of your journey towards chess mastery.